The alarm bells had been ringing for 17 days now. Commander Taman stood in the control room of Kepler Station, watching the enemy ships circle their home like hungry wolves. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he kept holding the cup anyway. It gave his hand something to do besides shake. Outside the thick windows, the gas giant Kepler 442b spun slowly in space. Its blue and green clouds looked peaceful from here. Beautiful even. But between the planet and the station, dozens of alien ships moved in deadly patterns. The Vextar had come to harvest them. "Commander, hull breach on Deck 7, called out Hyejin from her engineering station. Her voice was tired but steady. She had been working for 3 days straight, fixing what the aliens broke faster than they could break it. "I've sealed it for now, but we're running out of repair materials." Taman nodded. They were running out of everything: food, water, ammunition, hope. The station was home to 3,000 people. Most were Korean families who had traveled for decades to reach this distant star. They came here to mine rare metals from the planet's moons. They came here to build a new life. They never expected to die here. The Vextar ships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They were alive somehow, breathing and growing, and healing their wounds. When one got damaged, others would fly close and transfer parts of themselves to fix it. It was disgusting and terrifying at the same time. Dongwoo entered the control room, his security uniform torn and dirty. As the station's security chief, he had been fighting non-stop since the attack began. "We lost turret number 4, Hyo reported. "The acid ate through the mounting. That leaves us with 2 working guns. 2 guns against 40 enemy ships." Taman wanted to laugh, but nothing was funny anymore. "How much ammunition do we have left?" "Maybe 6 hours of continuous fire. Less if they bring more ships." Through the windows, Taman could see more Vextar vessels arriving. They dropped, out of space travel with flashes of sickly yellow light. Each new ship made their situation worse. "Sir," Hyejin said quietly, "I've been thinking about our options." Taman looked at her. Hyejin was brilliant. If anyone could find a way out of this mess, it would be her. "What do you have in mind?" "The fusion reactors. If we overload them all at once, the explosion would be big enough to take out most of their fleet. Maybe all of it." The control room went silent except for the hum of machines and the distant sound of weapons fire. Everyone knew what she was really saying. The explosion would also destroy the station, and everyone on it. "How long would we have?" Taman asked. "Once I start the process, maybe 15 minutes before it goes critical. No way to stop it after that." Dongwoo crossed his arms. "There might be another way. We could try to fight our way to the escape pods." "The pods only hold 500 people," Hyejin reminded him. "What about the other 2,500? And the Vextar have been shooting down anything that tries to leave," added Miran, who had just arrived from the mining levels. She was covered in metal dust and looked exhausted. "I lost 12 people today trying to get to the outer airlocks." Miran was tough as steel. She had been mining asteroids for 20 years before coming to Kepler Station. If she said something was impossible, it probably was. Young Su, the station's doctor, appeared in the doorway. His medical coat was stained with blood. "Commander, I need to report our casualties. 67 dead, 130 wounded. I'm running out of medical supplies." Taman closed his eyes. These weren't just numbers, they were people, families, children. He knew most of them by name. "Doctor, how many of the wounded can be moved if we need to evacuate?" "Maybe half. The others are too hurt to survive in the escape pods." The math was simple and horrible. Even if they could somehow fight their way to the pods, they would have to leave most people behind. And the wounded would die anyway. A new alarm started ringing. This one was different, more urgent. "Hull, breach on Deck 12, Hyejin announced. "They're cutting through the main support structure. If they get through there, the whole station could break apart." Dongwoo grabbed his weapon. "I'll take a team down there." "No," Taman said. "We need you here. Send Kim and his squad." "Kim's squad is dead, sir. Acid got them on Deck 9. The weight of command felt like a mountain on Taman's shoulders. Every decision meant life or death for someone. Every mistake cost lives. And he was running out of good choices. Through the communication system, they could hear the Vextar trying to talk to them. It came through as clicking sounds and chemical smells that the computer tried to translate. The message was always the same: surrender and be harvested or die fighting. "Commander," said a small voice from the doorway. It was Jun Ho, a 12-year-old boy whose parents worked in the agriculture section. "I have a message from level 15. The acid broke through the water recycling plant." Jun Ho had been running messages around the station since the communication lines got damaged. He was small enough to crawl through the maintenance tunnels where adults couldn't fit. He was also brave enough to do it while the station was under attack. "Thank you, Jun Ho," Taemin said gently. "Can you take a message back to your parents? Tell them to move everyone from that section to the emergency shelters." The boy nodded and disappeared back into the tunnels. Taemin wondered if he would see him again. "Sir," Heejin said, "I need a decision about the reactors. If we're going to do it, I need time to set everything up." Taemin looked around the control room. These people had followed him to the edge of known space. They trusted him to keep them safe. And he was about to make a choice that would kill them all. But maybe that was better than letting the Vextar have them. At least this way they would die as free humans, not as harvested animals. "Do it," he said quietly. "Start the overload sequence." Hyojin's hands hesitated over her controls. Once she started, there would be no going back. No rescue. No miracle. 15 minutes? Taemin asked. 15 minutes, she confirmed. "Then we make those 15 minutes count. Get on the station-wide communication. Tell everyone what's happening. They deserve to know." As Hyojin began preparing the reactor overload, Taemin sat down at his desk and started typing a message to Earth. Someone needed to know what happened here. Someone needed to know about the Vextar threat. Outside the windows, the alien ships continued their slow circle of death, not knowing that their prey had just decided to bite back. Hyojin's fingers moved across the reactor controls like she was playing a deadly piano. Each button press brought them closer to destruction, but also closer to taking the Vextar with them. She had explained the plan to the senior staff, and now there was no turning back. "Reactor 1 is beginning overload sequence," she announced. Her voice was calm, but sweat ran down her face. "Containment fields are holding, but I'm seeing pressure spikes." Commander Taemin watched the main display showing the station's layout. Red warning lights blinked on every level. People were moving toward the central areas, away from the outer hull where the Vextar were cutting through. "How long until we can't stop it?" he asked. "Once I start Reactor 3, we'll have passed the point of no return. About 10 minutes from now." Down in the medical bay, Young Soo worked frantically to save as many wounded as possible. He had moved his patients to the safest part of the station, but there wasn't much he could do with limited supplies. A young mining engineer lay on one of his tables, her leg badly burned by Vextar acid. "Doctor, will it hurt?" she asked quietly. Young Soo looked into her eyes. She was maybe 25, with her whole life ahead of her, or 15 minutes of it. "No," he lied gently. "It will be very quick." She smiled and closed her eyes. Young Soo had told the same lie to dozens of people today. Sometimes being a doctor meant knowing when not to tell the truth. In the mining levels, Miran was leading a group of volunteers in a desperate last stand. They had built barricades out of mining equipment and were using industrial tools as weapons. The Vextar had broken through the outer hull on Deck 8, and their acid-spitting creatures were pouring in. "Keep the welding torches hot," Miran shouted over the sound of weapons fire. "Burn anything that moves." A Vextar warrior appeared around the corner. It looked like a giant ant with too many legs and metal spikes growing from its back. One of the miners hit it with a plasma cutter, and the alien screamed before dissolving into smoking goo. "How? Many more are coming?" asked Dalho, an older miner who had worked with Miran for years. "Doesn't matter," Miran replied, reloading her improvised weapon. "We just need to hold them for a few more minutes." Everyone on the station knew about the reactor overload now. Taemin had made the announcement himself. Some people cried, some prayed, some just held their loved ones close. But nobody ran. There was nowhere to run to. In the maintenance tunnels, Junho was still carrying messages between different parts of the station. The tunnels were too small for the Vextar, so they were the safest place to travel. He crawled through the narrow spaces, bringing word from the defenders to the command center. "The bugs are through the hull on Deck 6, he reported to Taemin. "But Mr. Dongwoo's people are keeping them away from the main corridor." "Good boy," Taemin said, patting Junho's shoulder. "Can you take another message?" Junho nodded. He was scared, but he wanted to help. His parents had taught him that, when things got bad, people needed to work together. Dongwoo was fighting the battle of his life 3 levels down. His security team had been reduced to 8 people, and they were holding a choke point near the main elevator shaft. If the Vextar got past them, the aliens could reach the civilian shelters. "Motion detector shows 20 contacts coming up the main corridor," reported Officer So-jin, crouching behind an overturned desk. "Let them come," Dongwoo said grimly. He checked his rifle. 30 rounds left. After that, they would have to use hand weapons. The first Vextar appeared at the end of the corridor. It was bigger than the others, with thick armor plates and multiple weapon arms. Behind it came a swarm of smaller creatures that moved like spiders. "Fire!" Dongwoo shouted. The security team opened up with everything they had. Energy bolts and explosive rounds filled the air. The big Vextar staggered but kept coming. Its smaller companions scattered, looking for cover. "It's not going down," So-jin yelled. Dongwoo pulled out a thermal grenade. "Fall back to the next position. I'll buy you time." He waited until the creature was close enough, then pulled the pin, and threw the grenade right at its face. The explosion lit up the corridor like a small sun. When the smoke cleared, the big Vextar was gone, but more were coming. Back in the control room, Heejin was starting the overload sequence on Reactor 3. "This is it, Commander. Once I press this button, we have 15 minutes, and then everything goes boom." Taemin nodded. He had finished his message to Earth. It explained everything about the Vextar attack, their weapons, their tactics, their ships. Maybe it would help other human colonies defend themselves. "Wait," said a voice from the communication station. It was Yunwoo, the station's communication officer. "I'm getting something strange on the sensors." "Strange how?" Taemin asked. "There's a big energy reading at the edge of the system, really big, like something just dropped out of faster-than-light travel." Heejin paused with her finger over the button. "Could be another Vextar ship." "No, sir. The energy pattern is all wrong. It's not like anything I've seen before." Taemin looked at the tactical display. The new contact was massive, bigger than any ship in the human fleet. But it wasn't moving, like a Vextar vessel either. "Sir?" Yunwoo said, his voice getting excited. "I'm reading multiple smaller contacts launching from the big ship. They're moving toward us fast." "How fast?" "Faster than anything should be able to move. They'll be here in 3 minutes." Miran's voice crackled over the communication system from the mining levels. "Commander, the bugs are pulling back. They're retreating to their ships." Dongwoo confirmed the same thing from his position. "All Vextar forces are withdrawing. They're moving back to the outer hull." Taemin felt a tiny spark of hope, but he pushed it down. Hope was dangerous now. Could be a trick, or maybe they detected the reactor overload. "Sir?" Yunwoo said, his voice now full of wonder. "I'm getting a transmission. It's in Korean." The main speakers crackled to life. A calm, confident voice filled the control room. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Jae-sung of the TDF Vengeance. We received your distress call. Stand down your reactor overload and prepare for immediate tactical support." Everyone in the control room stared at each other in shock. Taemin found his voice first. "TDF Vengeance? That ship isn't in any registry I know." "Sir, should I stop the overload sequence?" Hyojin asked. Taemin's mind raced. This could be some kind of Vextar trick. They might have learned to copy human voices, but if it wasn't a trick, if there really was a human ship out there. "This is Commander Taemin of Kepler Station," he said into his microphone. "Can you prove you're human?" The voice came back immediately. "Commander, I understand your caution. You've been under siege for 17 days. Your chief engineer is named Haye Jin, your security chief is Dong Wu, and there's a 12-year-old boy named Jun Ho running messages through your maintenance tunnels. In 2 minutes, you're going to see exactly what happens when someone threatens human civilians. Taemin's heart skipped a beat. How could they know those details, unless they had been watching the station somehow, or… Haye Jin, he said quietly, hold off on the reactor. Let's see what happens in the next 2 minutes. Outside the windows, strange new ships were approaching the Vextar fleet. They moved like nothing Taemin had ever seen, sliding through space as if the laws of physics were just suggestions. The first thing Taemin noticed was how the unknown ships moved. They didn't fly through space like normal vessels. Instead, they seemed to slide between points, appearing in one location and then suddenly being somewhere else entirely. It was like watching ghosts made of metal and light. My sensors can't track them properly, Yunwoo said, his voice filled with confusion. They keep disappearing and reappearing. The computer doesn't know what to make of it. Through the control room windows, everyone could see the Vextar fleet changing formation. The alien ships had been circling the station like predators, but now they were clustering together defensively. Even they seemed confused by these new arrivals. Kepler Station, this is the Vengeance, came the voice of Captain Jae-sung again. We're beginning our attack run. Stay clear of external windows, and prepare for some bright lights. Before anyone could ask what that meant, the battle began. The unknown fighters opened fire, and Taemin realized he had never really understood what space combat could look like. These weren't the simple energy beams and missiles he was used. Tersur, the weapons from the mysterious ship seemed to bend reality itself. One beam curved around a Vextar vessel's shields and struck it from behind. Another weapon created what looked like a hole in space that swallowed an entire alien ship. A third fighter seemed to fire backwards in time, hitting a Vextar vessel before the fighter had even finished aiming. This is impossible, breathed Heejin, staring at her instruments. Those energy readings don't make sense. It's like they're using the universe itself as a weapon. The Vextar tried to fight back, but their acid weapons and biomissiles seemed useless against the unknown attackers. Whenever a Vextar ship fired, the target would simply disappear and reappear somewhere else untouched. Down in the mining levels, Miran and her team had stopped fighting to watch through the damaged hull. The retreating Vextar creatures were making sounds they had never heard before. Instead of their usual clicking and hissing, they were making high-pitched wails that sounded almost like screaming. They're scared, Dalho said in amazement. I never thought those things could be scared. On his security level, Dongwoo was seeing the same thing. The Vextar warriors that had been so confident just minutes ago were now running in panic. Some were trying to reach their ships. Others were simply hiding. Sir, this is Dongwoo, he reported to the control room. All hostile forces on our level have withdrawn. Repeat, the station is clear of enemy borders. Taemin could barely believe what he was hearing. Minutes ago, they had been preparing to die. Now the Vextar were fleeing like frightened animals. Commander, Yunwoo called out, the big ship is moving. The Vengeance, or whatever it is, it's coming toward us. On the main display, they could see the massive vessel approaching. It was unlike any human ship Taemin had ever seen. The hull was pure black, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols glowed along its sides in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Sir, I'm getting a docking request, Yunwoo reported. They want to come aboard. Taemin hesitated. These unknown people had just saved their lives, but he still didn't know who they were or what they wanted. Can we trust them? They could have destroyed us easily if they wanted to, Yejin pointed out. Their weapons are far beyond anything the Vextar had. This is Captain Jae-sung, came the voice over the speakers. Commander Taemin, I know you have questions. I'd like to answer them in person, if you'll allow me to dock. Taemin made his decision. Permission granted, Captain. Use docking bay 2. As the Vengeance attached to the station, people began gathering in the corridors leading to the docking bay. Word had spread quickly that their mysterious rescuers wanted to meet face-to-face. Young-soo came up from the medical bay. Miran and her miners arrived from the lower levels. and even little Junho emerged from the maintenance tunnels. Dongwu posted security guards around the docking bay, but they felt strange pointing weapons at the people who had just saved them. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. The first person to step through was a woman who looked to be in her 30s. She wore a uniform that was clearly military, but not like any Taemin recognized. The fabric seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and the insignia on her shoulders were made of light that hovered above the fabric. Behind her came 6 crew members, 3 men and 3 women. They all had the same strange uniforms and the same confident way of moving. But what struck Taemin most was their faces. They looked completely human, but there was something in their eyes that seemed ancient and knowing. "Commander Taemin," the woman said, stepping forward and extending her hand. "I'm Captain Jae-sung. It's an honor to meet you." Taemin shook her hand, surprised by how normal it felt. Her grip was firm and warm, entirely human. "Captain, I have to ask the obvious question. Who are you people and how did you get here so fast?" Captain Jae-sung smiled, but it was a sad sort of smile. "That's a complicated answer, but first let me ask you something. What year do you think this is?" "What year?" Taemin was confused. "It's 2387. Why would you ask that?" The captain exchanged glances with her crew. One of them, a young woman with engineer's markings on her uniform, shook her head slightly. "Commander," Captain Jae-sung said carefully, "we're going to have a difficult conversation. But first, is everyone on your station safe? Do you need medical assistance or supplies?" Young-soo stepped forward. "I'm the station's chief medical officer. We have wounded people who need help." "So Young," the captain said to one of her crew members, "take a medical team and assist the doctor. Use whatever supplies are necessary." The woman named So Young nodded and spoke into a device on her wrist. Within moments, more people in strange uniforms began coming through the airlock, carrying medical equipment that looked like it belonged in a dream. "Captain," Hyojin said, "your weapons, your ships, your technology, none of it matches anything in our databases, and you appeared out of nowhere, faster than any known form of travel." "You're right," Captain Jae-sung admitted. "Our technology is far beyond what you know, and that's because we're not from your time." The docking bay fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Everyone stared at the captain, trying to understand what she had just said. "From our time?" Taemin repeated slowly. "We're from humanity's future, Commander. About 200 years from now. We call ourselves the Terran Deep Fleet, and we travel through time as well as space." Junho, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "Like in the movies? You're time travelers?" Captain Jae-sung knelt down to his level. "Exactly like in the movies, Junho. And we came back to this time because you and everyone on this station are very important to the future of humanity." Mi-ran crossed her arms skeptically. "If you're from the future, prove it. Tell us something only time travelers would know." The captain stood and looked directly at Mi-ran. "In 3 days, you're going to discover a new type of mineral in asteroid, KX-7742. You'll call it temporite because it seems to exist in multiple time streams at once. That discovery will eventually lead to the technology that allows us to travel through time." Mi-ran's eyes went wide. KX-7742 was the asteroid they had been planning to mine next. No one else knew about their mining schedule. "But that's not the only reason we're here," Captain Jae-sung continued. "We're here because the Vextar attack on this station was supposed to succeed. In the original timeline, everyone here died. And that led to a series of events that almost destroyed humanity." "Almost destroyed?" Taemin asked. "The Vextar were just the beginning, Commander. They were scouts for something much worse. But by saving you, by changing this moment in time, we've given humanity a chance to prepare for what's coming." Ain. Captain looked around at all the faces watching her. "You asked who we are. We're your descendants. We're humanity's children, coming back to save our parents." The medical bay had been transformed. Where Young-soo had been struggling with basic supplies and improvised equipment, now there were devices that seemed to heal wounds just by scanning them. So Young, the medical officer from the Vengeance, worked alongside him with technology that made his 20 years of training look primitive. This is incredible, Young-Soo whispered as he watched a device close a severe burn wound in seconds. How does it work? Cellular regeneration matrix, So Young explained while treating another patient. We map the original DNA pattern and convince the cells to remember what they're supposed to look like. The body heals itself. The young mining engineer who had been burned by Vextar acid sat up on her table, staring at her leg in amazement. The terrible wounds were gone, replaced by healthy pink skin. It doesn't hurt anymore, she said, tears streaming down her face. Throughout the station, similar miracles were happening. The crew from the Vengeance had spread out to help with repairs and medical aid. Their tools worked like magic, fixing, in minutes, what would have taken weeks to repair. In the main conference room, Captain Jae-sung was explaining the situation to the senior staff. A holographic display showed images that seemed impossible to believe. The Vextar are part of something called the Consuming Dark, she said. The hologram showed vast fleets of ships, not just Vextar but dozens of other alien species. It's a collection of races that devour other civilizations to grow stronger. The Vextar were sent to test your defenses. Test us for what? Taimin asked. To see if humanity was worth consuming or just destroying. If you had surrendered, they would have harvested your knowledge and technology. If you had been destroyed, they would have marked this system as cleared for later colonization. Heejin studied the holographic data. But we were going to destroy ourselves and take them with us. That wasn't surrender or destruction in the way they expected. Exactly. Captain Jae-sung smiled. That's what makes humans special. When faced with impossible odds, we find a third option. The Vextar had never encountered that before. Dongwoo leaned forward in his chair. In your timeline, what happened to us? The captain's expression grew sad. The reactor overload worked. You destroyed most of the Vextar fleet, but the station and everyone on it was lost. The Consuming Dark decided humanity was too dangerous to harvest, but too weak to be a real threat. So they sent a much larger force to wipe out all human colonies. And they succeeded? Miran asked. Almost. Earth held out for 50 years, but we were fighting a losing battle. Humanity was pushed back to just a few systems, barely surviving. Young-Soo returned from the medical bay, his face bright with wonder. Captain, your people have saved everyone. Injuries that should have crippled people for life are completely healed. How can we ever thank you? By surviving, Captain Jae-sung said simply. By being the people you're meant to be. You see, in our timeline, we eventually won the war against the Consuming Dark. But it took us 300 years and cost billions of lives. We learned to travel through time specifically to come back and prevent that suffering. Wu Jin, one of the engineers from the Vengeance, activated another holographic display. This is what humanity becomes in our time, he said. The image showed massive space stations that dwarfed entire planets. Ships that looked like they were made of crystallized starlight moved between systems that had been completely transformed by human engineering. Cities floated in space, connected by bridges of pure energy. We don't just live among the stars, Wu Jin continued. We shepherd them. We guide the development of new civilizations, protect them from threats like the Consuming Dark, and ensure that intelligence and life can flourish throughout the galaxy. Junho, who had been quietly listening, raised his small hand. If you're so powerful, why don't you just go back and stop the bad aliens from ever being born? Captain Jae-sung knelt down to his level again. That's a very smart question, Junho. The answer is that changing too much in the past can break time itself. We can only make small changes, careful changes. Saving this station is one of those changes. But why is this station so important? Taemin asked. Because of what happens next, the captain replied. Miran discovers the temporite mineral. But more importantly, the research that begins here leads to breakthrough discoveries. And Junho? She looked at the boy. When you grow up, you become one of the most important scientists in human history. Junho's eyes went wide. Me? You? Your work on temporal mechanics creates the foundation for time travel. Without you, we never exist. Yunwu, who had been monitoring communications, suddenly spoke up. Captain, I'm detecting more ships approaching the system. Long-range sensors show at least 20 contacts. Captain Jae-sung stood immediately. Vextar reinforcements, we expected this. More of them? Dongwu reached for his weapon. Don't worry, the captain said calmly. This time we're ready for them. Through the windows, they could see the Vengeance moving away from the station. As it did, it seemed to grow larger, unfolding like a flower made of metal and energy. Weapon ports opened along its hull, revealing armaments that glowed with inner light. Wu Jin, signal the fleet, Captain Jae-sung ordered. Fleet? Taemin asked. In answer, space around the station began to ripple. One by one, more ships appeared, out of the darkness. Not the handful that had rescued them, but dozens. Then hundreds. Each one was unique, beautiful, and clearly designed for war. The Deep Fleet doesn't just travel through time, Captain Jae-sung explained. We patrol it. These ships come from different points in humanity's future, all working together to protect the past. The Vextar reinforcements dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a formation that should have been overwhelming. 20 massive bioships, each one larger than the original attacking fleet. But as they appeared, they found themselves facing something impossible. Beginning temporal combat maneuvers, announced So Young from the Vengeance's bridge, her voice coming through the station speakers. What happened next was beyond anything the people of Kepler Station could have imagined. The Deep Fleet didn't just attack the Vextar in the present. They attacked them in the past, the future, and in timelines that might have been. Some Vextar ships found themselves fighting their own past selves. Others discovered that their weapons had never been built. A few simply ceased to exist as their entire evolutionary history was carefully edited. It's not just a battle, Hee-jin breathed, watching her instruments try to make sense of the impossible readings. It's like they're rewriting reality. The fight lasted exactly 7 minutes. When it was over, the Vextar reinforcements were gone, and most of the Deep Fleet ships had returned to whatever time they came from. Only the Vengeance remained, floating peacefully near the station. Captain, Taemin said, what happens now? Now you live, Captain Jae-sung replied. You mine that asteroid and discover temporite. You raise your children and teach them to reach for the stars. You become the people who eventually create us. Will we see you again? The captain smiled. You'll see our descendants. And someday, far in the future, you'll build ships like the Vengeance and travel back to save your own ancestors. Time is a circle, Commander. We're all connected across the centuries. As the crew of the Vengeance prepared to leave, Junho ran up to Captain Jae-sung. When I grow up and become a scientist, will I remember this day? I hope so, she said, ruffling his hair, because remembering that help always comes, that humanity never abandons its own, is the most important lesson anyone can learn. The docking bay felt different now. Where before it had been filled with fear and desperation, now there was something else. Hope, maybe, or just the simple amazement that came from being alive when you expected to be dead. Captain Jae-sung gathered the senior staff one last time before departing. Before we leave, there are things you need to know, information that will help you prepare for what's coming. She activated a small device and suddenly the air filled with holographic images, star charts, technical diagrams, and what looked like historical records from a future that hadn't happened yet. The Vextar will return, she said bluntly. Not here, but to other human colonies. In 18 months, they'll attack the mining station at Wolf 359. 6 months after that, the agricultural colony at Proxima Centauri. Taemin studied the star charts. Can we warn them? You must warn them. But more than that, you need to help them prepare. The weapons we're leaving behind will give you an edge, but only if you use them wisely. Wu Jin stepped forward, carrying what looked like a simple metal briefcase. This contains fabrication templates for defensive systems. The technology is simplified, designed to work with your current industrial base. Simplified? Hyojin asked. Our real weapons require materials that won't be invented for another century, Wu Jin explained. But these designs will give you plasma shields, energy weapons, and faster-than-light communication systems. So Young added her own briefcase to the collection. Medical technology, healing compounds, surgical techniques, and genetic therapies. Nothing too advanced, but enough to save lives and extend human lifespan by decades. Why are you giving us all this? Young-Soo asked. Won't it change your timeline? Captain Jae-sung smiled. It already has. The moment we saved this station, we created a new branch of history. In our timeline, these technologies took humanity centuries to develop through trial and error. In your timeline, you'll have them in years. Myran looked at the technical diagrams floating in the air. This temperite mineral you mentioned, what exactly does it do? It exists in multiple time streams simultaneously, Woo Jin explained. When you mine it, you'll find that the same piece of ore can be in your hands and also still in the asteroid. It's the key to time travel, but also to energy generation, faster than light travel, and dimensional engineering. That sounds dangerous, Dongwoo said. Extremely dangerous, Captain Jae-sung agreed. In our timeline, the first temperite experiments destroyed 3 space stations and created a time rift that lasted for decades. But now you know what to avoid. She handed Taemin a datapad that seemed to be made of crystallized light. Safety, protocols, research guidelines, and warning signs. Follow them exactly and you'll avoid the disasters we had to learn from. Jun-ho, who had been quietly listening to the adults talk, suddenly spoke up. Captain, if I become a scientist and help invent time travel, will I be able to visit you? Captain Jae-sung knelt down to his level one more time. Jun-ho, in about 40 years you're going to build the first stable time portal, and the first person to walk through it will be a young woman named Jae-sung, who is my great-great-grandmother. The boy's eyes went wide with wonder. So you're my great-great-granddaughter? In a way, yes. Time travel makes family relationships very complicated. Yoon-woo, who had been monitoring long-range sensors, made an announcement. Captain, I'm detecting several ships approaching the system. They're broadcasting human identification codes. Right. On schedule, Captain Jae-sung said, standing up. That will be the rescue fleet from Earth. It seems word of your situation finally reached the right people. But how? Taemin asked. Our distress signal couldn't have reached Earth and brought back a rescue fleet in just a few hours. Because we made sure it reached them, So Young explained. The Deep Fleet has agents throughout history. When we saved you, they triggered a series of events that ensured a rescue fleet was dispatched weeks ago. Heejin shook her head in amazement. You've thought of everything. We've had a long time to plan this, Captain Jae-sung said, centuries in fact. As the crew of the Vengeance prepared to leave, they made final checks on the equipment they were leaving behind. Advanced medical scanners for Young-Soo's hospital. Defensive systems that would make the station nearly impregnable. Communication. Arrays that could send messages across the galaxy instantly. But perhaps most importantly, they left behind knowledge. Not just technical specifications, but wisdom earned through centuries of struggle. Remember, Captain Jae-sung said to the assembled crowd, the consuming dark isn't just about alien invasions. It's about the darkness that comes from giving up hope, from thinking you're alone in the universe. She looked around at all the faces watching her. People who had been ready to die just hours ago, now filled with purpose and determination. You're not alone. You're part of something larger than you can imagine. Every human colony, every research station, every family starting a new life among the stars. You're all connected, all part of humanity's great adventure. Miran stepped forward. Captain, what do we tell people? About the time travel, the future, all of this? Tell them the truth, Captain Jae-sung replied, that when things looked darkest, help arrived. That humanity takes care of its own no matter how far away they are, or how impossible the situation seems. The airlock was cycling shut when Jun-ho broke free from his parents and ran to the window. Captain, will I really become important? Captain, Jae-sung pressed her hand against the transparent aluminum from the other side. Jun-ho, you're already important. Every person on this station is important, that's why we came back for you. The Vengeance detached from the station with barely a whisper of sound. As it moved away, Its hull began to shimmer and fade. Within moments, it had vanished completely, leaving no trace except for the advanced equipment it had left behind and the memories of impossible things. 3 hours later, the rescue fleet from Earth arrived. Admiral Park, commanding the task force, was amazed to find Kepler Station not only intact, but stronger than ever. The Vextar threat had been completely eliminated, and the colonists were already back to work. Commander Tae-min, Admiral Park, said during the debriefing, "Your report mentions unknown allies. Can you provide more details?" Tae-min looked around the conference room at his senior staff. They all nodded slightly. "Admiral, we were saved by the future," he said simply. "And now it's our job to make sure that future comes to pass." Years later, when Junho was a graduate student studying temporal mechanics, he would sometimes look up at the stars and remember the day mysterious ships had appeared out of the darkness. The day he learned that no matter how alone you felt, somewhere in the vast reaches of space and time, your people were looking out for you. The research station he built on that asteroid, the one where Miran had discovered temporite, bore a simple plaque by the entrance. They believed no aid would arrive, but it did. Remember that help is always coming even when you can't see it yet. And in laboratories throughout human space, scientists worked on technologies that had been given to them by visitors from tomorrow, preparing for challenges they had been warned about, building toward a future where humanity would reach across the centuries to save its own children. The circle of time was complete, but it was also just beginning.